Welcome to Measuring Success Right, the official podcast of the Marriott Student Review, a podcast for students by students, where we connect the leaders of tomorrow with the issues of today.
All right, welcome to Measuring Success Right. I'm your host, Tyler Curtis. We're going to be doing another episode of How Did I Get Here, a mini-series we've been doing for the podcast. And with us today is Allison Havey. Allison is an advertising major at BYU, and she'll be graduating this April, not too long from now. Fun fact, she also likes to go mountain biking in the summer, so pretty soon you're going to have a lot of fun. Allison, so happy to have you with us.
Thanks, Tyler. I'm happy to be here today.
All right, well, let's get started. Tell us a little bit about advertising.
All right, so I'm studying advertising. So advertising is a lot of fun. It's kind of a good mix of like marketing and creativeness, like business. And so essentially what we try to do in advertising is a lot of times we're presented with these businesses problems or these problems, and we just try to find creative ways to solve them. And so sometimes this is in the form of a campaign, sometimes it's in form of a website, sometimes it's in the form of like a rebranding, but essentially we're just helping businesses kind of reach their goals, and a lot of it's just focused on how they communicate themselves to the outside world.
All right, awesome. Well, I mean, you're definitely the expert on this, not me. How'd you hear about this major?
Well, so I heard about this major. I was just kind of searching really for what I wanted to study. I had tried a few things and I felt like nothing was really like working out for me. It just wasn't like feeling right. I wasn't enjoying it. And then I ended up taking like a communications class. So advertising is within the School of Communications. It's one of the emphasis. I don't know. So advertising is within the School of Communications, and I took one of the general or like the intro level communications class. I think it was called Intro to Mass Communications, or something like that, where basically we kind of talked about communication and how, things like TV, websites, video stuff, like all like so one thing communicates to a lot of people, right? And I just kind of talked about communication in general. And this was one of the prereqs for advertising. So they talked a little bit. It was prereq for like So this was a prereq for advertising, PR, journalism, like all the communications studies, all those. And so they talked a little bit about advertising in there, and they brought in one of the professors, and he talked about it, and I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like, this is kind of interesting. So after I took that class, I was like, okay, I think this is really cool. This is interesting. I'd like to learn more about it. So I took the intro to advertising class, or like the prereq you need before you get into the program, and I loved it. I loved it so much. It was such a cool class. It was a lot unlike any of the other classes I'd been in. We were learning all the advertising like basics and principles, all like the little things. We were also working on a campaign all semester. So we went from like the start where we were presented a problem, and then we did a bunch of research. We came up with a strategy, and then from that strategy we came up with some creative ideas, and we created a whole campaign out of it. And that was just the whole class, and I thought that was so fun. I never really enjoyed a class like that. It was a lot of work. But it didn't really feel like work because it was a lot of fun and it was really interesting to me. And so I decided to apply to the program, and then I got in, I think like a year after I took the class. I don't know. I ended up applying soon after that, and then I got in, and since then I've been studying advertising, and I loved it.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I think you kind of hit a lot of questions I had for you already with that answer right there, and I think this class is a pretty big class for you. Going into this communication class, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. I guess what led you to get to that one class that had such an impact on your life?
It's kind of weird. I guess it's not really weird. So I was just kind of like in a point where I'm like, I need to figure out what I'm going to study, and I was just, I don't know, I was having a hard time because I felt like things weren't working out, right? I was just like, okay, what am I going to study? What's a good fit for me? What's something I'm actually going to like and something that's going to be fulfilling? And so I literally went through the course catalog, and I was just looking online, and I was just looking at all these different classes, all these different majors, and that one just, like, stood out to me, and I just felt like I should take it. Like, I just felt like I needed to take that class, and it just stood out to me, and I was like, okay, I mean, I need to fill my schedule. I don't know what else I'm going to do. So I took it, and yeah, that led me to get into advertising.
All right. And what was the name of this class again? It's a pretty big class.
So the one class I ended up taking is called, I think it was Intro to Mass Communications. It was like Comms 101 or something like that. I might be wrong, but I should probably look it up. But I think it was Intro to Mass Communications. And yeah, and so that led me to take the Intro to Advertising class, or Comms 230, and yeah, so.
Well, that's awesome. So, really, your story is just you found a class that you thought would be, just interesting and kind of covered generally what you were looking for, and then that class is kind of the gateway class to. Just like different majors that you said advertising, editing, and all, journalism, and all those other ones.
So advertising, PR, journalism, communication studies. So not editing, and that's a whole nother school.
Oh, okay, all right.
So if you want
my apologies to you editors out there.
Restart that, you can do that. No, but like I ended up taking a lot of other intro classes to a lot of other majors too. I probably took.
Oh, really?
I probably had enough credits to be a senior, or I was at least a junior, but I had a lot of class credits from a lot of classes, just because I was just trying different things out, trying to learn different skills. I was like, this looks interesting, this is something I want to learn. So I took, a few intro-level classes from a few different majors to kind of figure that out before I went there, so.
Really? Okay,
yeah.
So this comms class wasn't your first semester. When was this?
I think this was my fourth semester, I want to say. Or it was my third. But I had over a year and a half of school already. So I was already past my freshman year. I had enough credits to be a junior at this point, at least. Let me think. I think this was my third semester. It was either my second or third semester. No, it was my third or fourth semester. So,
wow, so definitely not in the beginning, though.
No, it was not the beginning. Yeah.
Well, hey, I mean, you're here now. You're about to graduate. I mean, totally successful in that regard. You found your major. And I guess you already touched a little bit on this with your story. Great story, by the way. I love hearing these things. But when it comes to knowing it was the right major, what was that moment? You mentioned a little bit that it didn't feel like work. Was that part of it?
Yeah. So I don't know. For me, it just kind of felt like a good fit because I kind of knew my strengths and I knew what I liked and didn't like. And so I love being creative. I love the idea of creativity. I just think it's so fascinating. I love coming up with ideas. I love solving problems. But it's a little bit more like application-based. So you're actually looking for solutions for real problems. And I don't know. I always really liked that. And I'd never really loved just sitting in a class, taking notes and regurgitating that on a test or just memorizing information. I don't love memorizing or just remembering things. I like actually doing things like hands-on, solving problems, coming up with like an application. I guess a little bit more of that entrepreneurial spirit. I don't know. I like that more. And advertising is kind of a mix between like you have like your business and management and then your creative like artsy, and it's just like meets right in that middle. So yeah, so it's just like a good mix of like creative and analytical, and I feel like that's just kind of how my brain works. So when I was in the class, I don't know, it was fascinating. All of it was fascinating. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to be better. I wanted to I don't know. I just really liked it. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't boring. I looked forward to going to the class. It was interesting. It was inspiring. I was like, wow, I could see myself doing this, and it was fulfilling. Maybe that's the biggest thing. I found it like one of my more fulfilling classes, where I felt like what I was doing was fun and it was worth it, but I was also like learning at the same time. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Actually, I do want to ask one question. So, I mean, digging even a little deeper. So, have you always been kind of an artistically minded person?
I would probably say so. When I was little, I remember like when, like you're in kindergarten, everyone's like, oh, what do you want to, or so when I was in like kindergarten or like that kind of age, people would be like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, oh, I want to be an artist. I liked drawing. I liked I don't know. I liked doing that kind of stuff. I liked arts and crafts. And then I always I always really enjoyed my art classes. I liked making things. And I mean, as I got through high school, I was like, maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll be an architect. Maybe I'll be an interior designer. Maybe I'll be a graphic designer. Maybe I'll do this or that. I don't know. I just was open, but I always wanted to do something creative. I just couldn't see myself being happy doing something, that wasn't creative. Like, that's just, I don't know. I'm happiest, I guess, when I'm creative. It's very, relaxing. It's fun. It's fulfilling, right? And so I didn't always know I'd get into advertising. I didn't actually really know what advertising was, to be honest, until I took, the pre-communications classes. But I was like, whoa, this is, the stuff I like to do. This is, a little bit of everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so, so really what happened then is just in that comms class, it totally just kind of just showed you, hey, here's a way to apply those kind of creative abilities you've had your whole life. Well, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, and it was a little more than you're an artist. People are like, oh, I mean, you can't make a living off it. That's a thing. But it's like, oh, it's something that's a little bit more, I guess, like a industry. I could work for companies. I could work for businesses. It's something that has a little bit more of a clear career path. That being said, it's still pretty open. There's a lot of things I could do with, I guess, the degree than more just oh, I'm good at art. I'm oh, I understand business, but I also understand design. I understand strategy. I even learned a little bit of video shooting and editing, all the visual communication stuff. So I'm help me with it just helped me with a lot of things that would be really useful to businesses to help them, get their message out there and to help them, improve what they want to say and who they are as a brand.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so now, speaking of careers and all of that, I mean, you're about to graduate. I guess, what's next for you?
That's a good question. So I'm kind of in this process of looking at my options, trying to figure out what I want to do. I've been looking at different companies, talking to people from different companies. Within different companies, there's a lot of different roles within advertising itself. And so I'm trying to decide, what would be a good fit for me, right? And so I need to make that decision still. I haven't, but I'm talking to people. I'm putting myself out there. I'm applying to jobs. And, yeah, so we'll see. I don't have anything nailed down yet, but I think I have some options, so.
Hey,
yeah.
Well, we wish you the best of luck in that regard. All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about your major, just your journey in your major, I should say. What was probably the most challenging part for you in advertising?
That's a good one. Let me kind of talk a little bit more about my major for that one. So in advertising, it's probably a little bit different than your traditional, program at school, right? Because a lot of times what we do is we're trying to find solutions to problems, or we're trying to create campaigns. So it's a lot about just coming up with good ideas, right? So you have to be kind of good at, or you have to learn. You don't even have to be good. You have okay. So in my major, you kind of have to learn how to just kind of come up with ideas. And you have to understand that there's not just one solution, that there could be a lot of different solutions. And you can come up with a ton of different ideas, and you have to be okay with coming up with sometimes we come up with 100 ideas, 50 ideas for one thing, and they all have to be different and creative. And then you have to be really good at going, okay, what would work, what wouldn't work, and then you have to be really good at taking feedback. And that can be kind of hard because you're like, oh, I really like this idea, and then someone's like, oh, this isn't going to work, I don't like it, or go and redo it. And so I feel like a lot of times you can always make it better, and someone's always not going to like it, which is fine. So you really have to learn to kind of separate people's criticism and comments from the work itself, right? So you have to think, okay, they're not criticizing me, they're criticizing the work. This isn't my abilities, my skills, my knowledge. This is just the work, and I can take this and make it better, revise it, and take it back. Next time turn it in or give it to the client. And I think that's kind of a hard thing to grasp at first, that you have to be really good at taking feedback, really good at taking criticism, without feeling like it's a personal attack, because it's not. It's just like, hey, this is the goal, and this is helping us achieve our goals, or how could we make this better? And, another thing, too, is a lot of times it's really good to get feedback from people. You're like, okay, I'm working on this project. This is kind of what I think is going to work. And then you probably want to show it to, like, your peers or people you're working with, and everyone will have different ideas for how to make it better, how to improve it. And sometimes it's good to know, first of all, you have to be really humble to you really have to be able to be like, okay, I don't agree with this, but actually they might be right because they know this, and be willing to kind of shift really quickly or change or start over. I've definitely had to, like, scrap projects I've spent lots of hours on and completely start over. So it takes a lot of time. I think that's a hard thing, too, to realize, that you see these, like, finished, polished pieces, and you don't really realize, like, the hours of research and ideating and starting over, and how much work goes into, like, a simple, like, tagline in an image, or, like, something that seems really simple, but there's actually a lot of studying, or maybe not really studying, but more like a lot of research, a lot of thought, a lot of ideas, a lot of revisions that go into something small, right? And so I don't think going into it you realize how much work that actually is, and to really get something good, you really do have to put in a lot of time. But that's, like, for anything in life. If you want something good, you got to put in a lot of time and effort behind it. That's just kind of how it works.
That's excellent insight. And honestly, I don't know if I've really thought much about, the whole, processing feedback that's on your work, and how you have to, like, not take it personally. I haven't really thought about that side of it, but yeah, no, I love that.
No, because I feel like in other majors, it's like, oh, you got this right, or you didn't get it right, or this is why you didn't get it right. And sometimes it's like, this isn't working, but I don't know why it's not working. And you have to figure out, okay, why is this not working? Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. You have to, it's kind of hard sometimes. It's kind of mentally exhausting, but it's also mentally rewarding. So, it's like, you got to love the process, not, like, the end goal, really, I think is the whole thing that I've learned. I like just, like, doing it. And I love having a finished piece. I love having, like, an end and being, like, done. But you have to love doing the whole thing. And I just like the whole process of it. So
one other thing you mentioned as well that I thought was kind of interesting is I guess I have a follow-up question about how sometimes people don't like your ideas and they present an idea that's not as good in your opinion. Have you had any experiences of that where, I guess, what are your thoughts on that whole process?
Oh, where people don't like my idea. Well, sometimes, you come up with a lot of ideas. And sometimes I feel like when you come up with an idea, you kind of get stuck. Maybe not in a rut, but, like, in a certain, like, grain of thinking. And you need to, sometimes it's good to take a break or even take different perspectives. And so I think other people having different ideas or presenting other ideas, it kind of helps you expand your thinking and tackle problems from a new angle, right? So I've kind of just had to, like, sometimes you're like, I think I have a really good idea, and then someone presents something different that they also think is a good idea. So you both think you have these really great ideas, right? And I think, that's, I don't know. Sometimes, first of all, you have to learn not to take things personally. You have to think of it as a process. Like, we're all just coming up with ideas. And I think the best solution that I have found to this is you kind of, when you're working with people and you're having, like, a brainstorming session, you're coming up with the solution, and everyone's come prepared with all these ideas, these thoughts, and you just kind of all share what you think, you write it all down, and then you take a look at all these ideas, and you're like, okay, what idea or combination of ideas fits under our strategy or fits under our problem that help us get to our solution, right? So how can we make, or what ideas would make work? So you really, I think the best solution is not taking one or the other, but finding bits and pieces that you can combine together to make an even better idea. So it's using those ideas to form a better idea. And whether that's those ideas inspire something better or a little bit from one or another creates a better solution. And if everyone kind of comes to the team with that attitude or that like expectation, I feel like that really helps. Now, if you're with people that you're not quite seen on the same eye, if you have different people that you just like can't quite find an agreement, I don't know, sometimes it's like better just to kind of take a break and be like, okay, well, keep thinking about this, keep researching, and maybe we'll come up with like an even better idea. I don't know, because it's all group work, right? You're always working with, or in my experience, it's a lot of working with other people, a lot of minds working together, a lot of really smart people. There's a lot of really smart people in my program, really talented people, really hardworking people. And we all have these different perspectives, and so you just need to find a way for you to all work together. And that's hard, and I don't know the right answer to that, but, I think just keeping an open mind and realizing that you don't know everything, but also still being confident in your experiences, in your point of view. And so it's just kind of finding a balance, I guess, of that.
Well, thank you so much for that. One thing that I really like about this mini-series that we've done the past couple episodes is I really believe that you can learn something from anyone. Anyone can teach you something you don't know. And I can at least speak for myself in that I've definitely had that experience today. And just kind of going off of that, there are a lot of people out there who are just about to submit their applications to BYU or who are in BYU and they're stuck. Maybe they've been here for several years. Maybe they're in their fourth semester, not sure what they want to do for a major. What advice would you have to them as far as picking a major?
Well, with that one, I would say first, don't rush it. There is no rush to graduating. I'm not saying don't work hard. Still work hard, still try to find it, but don't feel like you have to know what you're doing within the first year or even the first 2 years, even first 3 years. I mean, I could get in trouble for saying that, but I'd say take the time you need to kind of feel things out, take different classes, try something different. It's kind of hard to know sometimes what you do and don't like unless you try it, right? And there's nothing wrong with deciding to take one class and being like, no, that's not for me, and deciding to take another class. What I think, though, is the most important thing is to think, what is most important to me? What are my long-term goals? And what's going to make me fulfilled in the long run? So what will make me fulfilled, right? And so if you can see yourself doing something that leads you to have like a fulfilling life, and that major is going to help you do that, and you think it's interesting, then go for it. I think that's a really good indicator that you're choosing the right major.
Thanks so much, Allison. I think a lot of this theme of fulfillment has been a big theme of just as far as just everything you've shared with us today. Our last question is kind of a tradition with this podcast, and I want to ask it to you. Is just what does success mean to you, and how do you measure success?
I think for me, my success is more when I'm looking at what I did and what I've done. Am I happy with what I did? Did I work my hardest, and do I like the result, right? And I think that's success. Am I a better person because of it? And again, with this theme, is it fulfilling? And then I think at that point, I think that's success if you're fulfilled and happy with what you choose to do. and you feel like it's making you a better person and it's making the world around you better. I think that's success.
Well, thanks so much, Allison. I loved having you today, and we've loved having you with us. And so we'll let you go, but that was Allison Havey, everyone.
Thank you.
Make sure you subscribe to our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or SoundCloud so you never miss an episode. Be a friend and tell a friend about measuring success right.
This podcast is a project of the Marriott Student Review at Brigham Young University. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Marriott Student Review or online at marriottstudentreview.org.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect official policy or position of Brigham Young University or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.